Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about cerebellum. You can see the diagram of the cerebellum is shown here. Cerebellum, also called as the small brain, though small in size, it serves very important functions like maintaining tone, posture and equilibrium of the body. It controls the same side of the body directly or indirectly. Here the grey matter is highly folded to accommodate millions of the neurons in the small area, and the arrangement, you can see here the arrangement is shown. That arrangement is called as the arbor vitae, that is the vital tree of life. The location of the cerebellum, it is the largest part of the hindbrain and is situated in the posterior cranial fossa, behind the pons and the medulla oblongata. It is a infratentorial. You can see it is present below the tentorium cerebelli. It is an infratentorial structure that coordinates the voluntary movements of the body. Relations, if we see, cerebellum anteriorly it is related to the fourth ventricle, pons and medulla. Postero-inferiorly with the squamous occipital bone, and superiorly with the tentorium cerebelli. Right? These are the three relations of the cerebellum. Now the external features of the cerebellum. It consists of two cerebellar hemispheres that are united with each other. We'll see in a diagram, another diagram. Let us see. Here you can see these are the two cerebellar hemispheres. They are connected with the vermis. You can see a part of the vermis is shown here, right? So the two cerebellar hemispheres are united to each other through a median vermis. It has two surfaces, superior and inferior, right? You will find two surfaces, superior and inferior. The superior surface is convex. The two hemispheres are continuous with each other on this surface. The inferior surface shows a deep median notch which is called as vallecula, right? You can see in one another diagram, this one. You can find this is the vallecula, right? Which separates the right and the left hemisphere, right? So on the inferior surface, both the right and the left hemispheres, they are separated by a deep median notch that is called as the vallecula. That notch is called as vallecula. The anterior aspect of the cerebellum is marked by a deep notch in which you can see the pons and the medulla are lodged, right? You can see here the deep notch for the pons and the medulla, right? And posteriorly there is a narrow and a deep notch here, right? Yeah, here you can see there is posteriorly a deep notch that is present, in which there is a falx cerebelli that is present. Okay, so falx cerebelli lies in the deep notch posteriorly. Now each hemisphere, if we see, it is divided into three lobes, right? We'll see one another diagram for it. Here you can see the three lobes are very nicely shown, right? Anterior lobe, middle or the posterior lobe, and flocculonodular lobe. The anterior lobe, here you can see, it lies on the anterior part of the superior surface, and it is separated from this middle lobe by a fissure, right? This fissure is called as the fissura prima or primary fissure. The middle lobe, that is sometimes also called as the posterior lobe, it is the largest of the three lobes. It is limited in front by the fissura prima on the superior surface, and posteriorly on the inferior surface it is limited by this one another fissure. This is called as posterolateral fissure. The flocculonodular lobe, it is the smallest lobe of the cerebellum. It lies on the inferior surface in front of the posterolateral fissure, right? So you can easily see the anterior lobe, the middle or the posterior lobe, and the flocculonodular lobe, right? Now the parts of the cerebellum. Now the cerebellum is subdivided into numerous parts by fissures, right? You can see in this diagram also you will find there are so many fissures that are present on the cerebellum, right? So it is divided into numerous small parts by many fissures, and each fissure, it cuts the vermis and the cerebellar hemispheres. Okay. Each fissure cuts the vermis and both the hemispheres, but out of all these numerous fissures, we are only going to remember three fissures, right? One we can see here is the horizontal fissure, right? This here fissure that you can see is the horizontal fissure. It separates the superior surface from the inferior surface, right? Then comes the primary fissure or the fissura prima that we have already seen, right? It separates the anterior lobe from the middle lobe on the superior surface of the cerebellum, right? Now see, we have talked about the horizontal fissure that is separating the superior surface and the inferior surface. Now on the superior surface itself you will find a fissura prima, right? That is the primary fissure that is separating the two lobes, right? That is the anterior lobe from the middle or the posterior lobe, right? Then comes the posterolateral fissure that separates the middle lobe from the flocculonodular lobe on the inferior surface, right? That also we have seen. The various parts of the cerebellum, right, that is both the vermis and the hemisphere, are shown in this diagram, where both the superior surface and the inferior surfaces are drawn in one plane. The upper part of the diagram above the horizontal fissure represents the superior surface, and the lower part below the horizontal fissure, it represents the inferior surface. The parts of the vermis, right? Now first we will see the parts of the vermis. In the vermis, the different parts are, first you will find the lingula, then central lobule, then comes the culmen, declive, then folium, right? Then on the inferior surface it will be tuber, pyramid, uvula, and the last one is nodule, right? You can see now it is visible. You can see the nodule part, okay? Now all these parts of the vermis that we have seen, right, they have the lateral extensions on the cerebellar hemispheres, except for the lingula. Lingula does not have any lateral extension on the hemisphere, but remaining all the parts of the vermis, they have the lateral extensions on the cerebellar hemispheres. Like for the central lobule you have ala, for culmen it is quadrangular lobule, For declive, it is simplex lobule. Folium, superior semilunar lobule. For the tuber, inferior semilunar lobule. For pyramid, biventral lobule. For uvula, it is tonsil. And for the nodule, it is flocculus. Okay, so all these are the lateral extensions of the parts of the vermis, or you can also call them as the subdivisions of the cerebellar hemispheres, right? These are the parts of the vermis or the subdivisions of the vermis, and these all are the parts or the subdivisions of the cerebellar hemispheres. Okay, so we end this video here only, right, with the parts of the cerebellum. In the next video, we will take the morphological and the functional parts of the cerebellum, connections, gray matter, functions of the cerebellum, and its applied anatomy. Bye for now.